All right, dudes. So this is going to be kind of like a follow-up video to the diagnosing and troubleshooting video that we did with this CRV that had the P0300 misfire code. We went through and diagnosed it. We found that it had a burnt valve. So now I'm going to show you guys how to do, what you need to do to fix it. And this is basically putting on another cylinder head, doing the timing belt, the head gasket, all the assorted hoses. This actually has a newer water pump on it, so we're not going to worry about that. I would suggest that typically when you do this though, new intake manifold gaskets, new exhaust gaskets, new head gasket, new water pump, timing belt, and tensioner. That's the best way to do it. Obviously, if you're on a budget and you can't afford some of those things, it looks like you're gonna have to roll the dice. I know everybody's done it. It's probably not the best way to do it. Everybody's gonna be up in arms. Oh, you shouldn't do that. But when you're low on money, you got to figure out what you can do. I already went ahead and got the new head gasket, which is there, Felpro, and the intake manifold gasket. I think combined it was about 50, 60 bucks at AutoZone. Normally I would suggest that you get the OEM stuff, but this is a budget car, and this isn't typically how I do things. I would normally just drop a JDM engine in it. So I'm doing this just to make the video, so I'm gonna save a little bit of money and win wherever possible. So now I'm gonna show you guys what you need to do. We're actually gonna be, that's the old head. I was gonna send it out to the machine shop. That's what you would normally do. Get it decked, put a valve job on it, they'd hot tank it. Probably be about $150 to $250 depending on what work needs to be done, what kind of condition it's in. I'm actually not going to do that because I have so many other engines. I have some JDM engines that I showed you guys before. So I'm actually gonna tear this cylinder head down. As you can tell, it's in pretty good shape. It should be usable as is. We don't have any problems with that. So we'll yank this thing off, get it cleaned up, moved all of our other stuff over, and then we'll go from there. And I'll show you how to put this head gasket on, get it all cleaned up. In fact, even the pistons and everything in the block look pretty good. So hopefully all goes well, fingers crossed. I know sometimes when you film some of this stuff, it doesn't go as planned. So we'll start tearing this down. I don't know if you guys got to see it before, but you take the valve cover off just with the hardware that goes around it. And then once you get in here, you loosen up all the cam caps all the way across. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 on each side. Release those off. I use a rubber mallet to whack it. That loosens them up. And then they come up nice and easy. After we get that done, we will lift these cams up. As you can see, they're numbered. Exhaust E1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually 4, and then that's 4, 5, 6. Sorry, I was reading the numbers on there. But as you can see, they all point towards this way, so we know what goes there. And then we will take out the rocker arms, and they need to stay in their respective locations as well too. So we have a little container that I like to stick them in. I'll put them in like this. I'll label it intake, exhaust, and then I'll lay the rockers out like that. So when it's time to put it back in, and then you can see the head bolts underneath there. They're down in those little holes right there, there. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of them. The 2 longer ones going in the middle. We'll remove those off, lift up the head, inspect it, clean it up a little bit, and go from there. I'll see you guys in a little bit when we're ready. We got the head off of this old girl. As you can see, PHK pistons and a knock sensor. Many of you know, this is a high comp B20. So we're gonna we'll use the heads for sure, or the head. But yeah, now that we got the head off, make sure you kind of put it in a safe location. I laid some rags down, some clean new rags to kind of protect the mating surface. Typically you would want to get this decked. We've got the rockers, intake, and exhaust all laid out in their order. We've got the cam caps. And you know, when we go through and put those in individually, we're gonna be wiping off the threads. We're gonna be cleaning them up. And then now, we need to go through this head, you know, get a real good look at it. I wanna look at the underside. And then we also wanna clean up this mating surface here where the new head gasket is gonna go. Make sure that the dowel pins are still available. In fact, I didn't see the dowel pins in this block, so more than likely they are still in that head. So that's another thing to be kind of aware of when you're doing all of this. And then clean up things as best as you can. Now's the time to do it while it's all easily accessible. And this obviously had sat for a while, so this engine bay is dirty. So we gotta be extra diligent in keeping everything clean. But we have the bare cylinder head. I want to take a quick little peek at everything. I really just want to roll it over, look at the exhaust valves and see what's going on there, just to double check, you know, that everything is okay. All right, 1 second. We really want to go through and look at these valves, make sure they look complete and clean, nothing too crazy. It looks like even there might even be a little something on that guy there. We'll take and inspect it and look at it. Make sure that the mating surface is okay and clean. And look, there's those dowel pins that we lost. So yeah, I'll go through this head and make sure everything looks good. And then we will meet back up on how to put it on, and then reassembly of the timing components and the rest of the car and get it running. All right, so I went ahead and looked at the head, and all the valves seem very decent. No weird chips or crazy carbon buildup. I went through with a nice rag, a fine edge razor blade. Be careful, you don't want to mar, scratch, or jack up this surface at all. You just really want to get as much of this little gunk off as possible, especially if it's not going to be decked. We got to get this thing as clean as possible. Cleaned up a little bit of the carbon deposits that are inside the combustion chambers as well too. That all kind of cleaned off nicely. And then I started cleaning off the surface, the mating surface on the block. So you just kind of got to go slow and take your time, because if you don't get a good seal, you know, these combustion gases are going to mix with your coolant. You're going to blow a head gasket. It's going to overheat. You're going to cause more problems. Oil, it's going to leak out the side. There's all kinds of things that can happen. You can really warp the head and cause bigger, worse problems later on. So we're going to take our time and get it all cleaned up real nice. But as you can see, the only thing I'm really using is some brake cleaner, shop towels, you know, get some extra ones, some cleaner ones, a plastic bristle brush that's soft, you know, it won't scratch anything. And of course, well, I don't know where I put it, but just a straight razor blade seems to do the trick. Just go slow, put it at an angle and slide it across. Don't dig into it, because if you cause gouges there, you're really gonna have problems. You're gonna waste it. And there we go, there's the razor blade. So just kind of gently, sorry, I'm holding my phone with greasy gloves. I gotta be careful. I just got this phone, my last one, crapped out when we went down and visited the Native Americans out on the reservation. So, as you can see, just kind of clean that surface up. There you go, take your time, especially here. A lot of this stuff you're gonna be seeing is residue from the old gasket. So that's gonna affect the clamping force that we're able to put down. We want it to be nice, even, consistent everywhere, especially in between the cylinders, where the cylinders meet the coolant passages. And then we're good. And since this engine didn't actually overheat, it just burnt a valve. This block, you know, the head surface of this block, or the mating surface of the block, isn't warped. You can check it with a straight edge, but it's not really gonna matter. All right, I will go through and finish cleaning this up. Same thing with here too, and just double check it all. And then I will get the head bolts and the head gasket ready. And we can install it together. Use the factory spec torque specifications. I think it's 2-stage. You take it to 22 foot-pounds. And then the final is you take it to 68. I have to check. I will pull up the factory manual for these. Make sure that the head bolts are dipped in engine oil. If you hear any noises while you're torquing it down, back it off and start back off at the previous step. There's also a lot of debate on whether to reuse head bolts or not. Technically, Honda head bolts are not torqued to yield, so you can reuse them. And in fact, I'll show you in the factory manual if you want to see if you can or not using a micrometer, just measuring. If you can afford it, why not? Go ahead, do it. They're not crazy expensive. But if you're in a bind, a pinch, or somewhere far away, or they don't have them in stock, or for whatever reason you're low on a budget, you know, there are multiple ways to do things. Don't let people bully you into, oh, you have to do it this way, or this is the only way to do it. But if you're dealing with a cheap car, you know, there's no reason to put ARP head studs in this. But there's also, if I was running a turbo GSR, I wouldn't have stock Honda bolts in it anyway. And so, you know, there's an option for every budget. But if it does crap out, you can always get a new head gasket. What you don't want to do is pull the threads out of these things. So we got to inspect those real well too, blast them out with some air, kind of see what's going on down there. And we will start off with that. All right, see you guys. All right, so we got all of the mating surfaces cleaned up pretty damn good. And then we got the intake manifold mounted to the head to give us a little bit of leverage and ability to better grab it. But it's on, it's all cleaned up. And we've got the head gasket, and we also got the pins there, the dowel pins. And as you can tell, on the head gasket, it says up. So obviously make sure you install it with this side up. That's a really common thing that people do, is they put them on upside down. You can see this little point there, obviously goes right there, or this little bit there. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's not rocket science. Even like this middle long piece will go there. As you can tell, it just sits right down in there like so. And now it is on. So we just gotta grab this head, set it down on top of it, and we will get to the next step. So slowly threading in the head bolts. I want to make sure that all of these holes are free of debris before we go to that step though. So actually I'm going to pull this off. Check out those holes. I'll put this over here. Don't bend it, fold it, any of that other crazy stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look at those holes real quick. All right, so now we're just going to put the head on. We got JD filming, and we're going to, here we go. We're going to feel for these dowel pins and not scrape it across the head too much. I think we're on there. Push that piece back. And now we are on, and just to verify that we're on, let's look down the head bolt holes on all, make sure there's nothing crazy going on. And we are on like that. So now we're gonna take a minute and we'll see you guys here in a second. With a rag and some brake cleaner and cleaned off all the threads, you wanna be able to see what's around them. You'll be able to use, there's schmutz and stuff in them. The two longer ones obviously go in the middle. And as we go through this, we're gonna do one at a time. Dip it, the threads, and some clean motor oil. Don't dip it in the shit you pulled out of the car. And then we'll go down. Let's knock out these longer ones too. Clean motor oil. There. It's gonna get a little messy. Clean motor oil. And then there. Same thing. 10 times. We'll go there. Give that guy some. Went through, took a look at the head bolts to factory specifications. Obviously, if you can afford it, and if it's in your budget and they're available, use new ones every time. But we're gonna do this build. It's a little bit on a budget. We wanna get things done cheaply and affordably. So we're actually gonna try reusing these original ones. Make sure the holes, we cleaned them out with a rag. And then just gonna finger tighten them down, make sure they go smooth, make sure there's no issues, drag. If you feel anything or hear anything, pull the thing out. We're gonna torque it down into 2 stages, 2 steps. The first step being 22 foot-pounds, and the second step, the final stage, being 68. I'll have to take a look at that though, so we'll take a look at the factory guide. But right now, I just want to take these down, and we'll also do it down in the factory sequence as well too. But what I'm doing as I go this, as I'm tightening them down by hand, I'm feeling to see if there's any drag or resistance on the bolt. It's going to give me an idea of what these threads feel like. Because we're using steel bolts on aluminum block, these bolts will yank the threads out of that block without even trying. If there's debris in there, that's gonna affect our torque numbers. And so you gotta take your time, get a good feel for it. And then we'll also do it in the proper sequence so we can seal the head properly, similar to how you would a Rubbermaid thing. You want it to burp right, seal right, so we'll go from the outside in. At least we removed it from the outside in. We'll have to take a look at the tightening sequences. The tightening sequences might be inside out, the opposite. But as I'm going through and doing this with my hand, everything's lubricated, feels nice. What the oil allows us to do is to keep things gliding smoothly so we can get accurate torque numbers. If it's dry, metal on metal, if there's some debris in there, that bind will cause a false torque reading. And since we're using factory bolts, we're gonna use factory specifications. Don't do any of the stuff that people tell you about, that if you're gonna reuse them, go 5 pounds over, any of that other stuff. Don't do that. During the initial torque sequence to 22, you're really not gonna feel anything. That's a pretty low one. But when you're going to do the last one to 68, make sure it's a clear, concise, consistent movement. It doesn't have to be super slow, but don't do it fast till you hit your click. And if you hear the bolt talking or making any kind of noise, back off right then and there. Take it down to the previous setting, or take the bolt out completely and take a look at it. Take a look down into the hole. But at no point in time do you ever just, give it the beans, or the full ooga dooga experience. You don't want that. That's gonna cause problems. You're gonna waste a head gasket. And if you strip the threads out of this block, you're gonna have way bigger problems on your hands than a head gasket or a valve. You can helicoil them or whatever else, but on a B20 like this, if you junk out the threads, I scrap the whole thing. You can salvage the crank. A good 89 millimeter crank is nice to have laying around, but it's good for parts basically after that. So let's not do that. We're trying to save money. not give ourselves more work. All right, we got all the head bolts in there, finger tight. And here is the factory specifications for this engine. As you can see, it is, let me turn this light off so we get to get that glare away. There we go. Well, that didn't really take any of the glare off at all. Tighten the cylinder heads, bolts in 2 steps, 22 foot-pounds being the first, 63 foot-pounds being the second. And here's the order that we do them in. So it was inside out. Inside out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfectly. So those, there it is. So, in case you need it, 22 and then 63. So let's grab the torque wrench and get started. All right, so there's the torque wrench. We went through, did them all at 22, and then I went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And as you can tell, after I did the final torque sequence, did them all at 22, then I set my torque wrench to 63 foot-pounds, and I did them all again. And after each one, I marked it with yellow grease paint, just to show, hey, I did this one, I can move it on, and now I can look at all of them, and they are all on. And so boom, the head gasket is on, it's done. Now it's time to put the rockers back in, the cams back in, the cam caps, put everything back on timing, start buttoning this all up and get all good to go so we can do a final timing, final install, fill it all up with coolant, and we'll crank it and see if we were successful. So now it's just reassembly time. And again, if you need to see that sequence, there it is. And then above that, 22 and 63. Make sure you have the 2 dowel pins. Make sure you have that middle O-ring in there. Good head gasket. There it all is. So now let's knock this out and finish it up.